get going, I know we might have some community members.
All righty, well, let me go ahead and hit broadcast. So mics are hot and we're live.
All right, I'd like to call this special work session for budget to order. And I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Francis and Wes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, I'm going to turn this over to Chris Holzer.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to review the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. So starting with revenue, on property tax, we're coming into a non-reassessment year, so we don't expect the assessed valuations to fluctuate too much. Typically, the only changes we see are with new construction and improvements and personal property. So we're estimating both of those to increase AV about $3 million, which would be a $102,000 increase, 54 of which would be to operations, and then 48,000 of which to debt service. Moving on to sales tax, or Prop C. In fiscal 20, we budgeted right at 1.2 million. We are expecting a bit of an increase there at 113,000 or 9%. That's primarily due to increasing students due to claiming preschool students for basic formula and some adjustments that DESE has made to the prior year weighted average daily attendance. So one of the things that we are doing, DESE is projecting 1,049 per WADA. We are going on the conservative side and budgeting right around $990 per weighted ADA. So DESE rarely hits this target, so we're going to shoot below that. And if it gets higher than that, that's great, but otherwise we are projecting less. On basic, on basic formula, we are expecting the payment per WADA to be 1627, and then weighted ADA for 1,404 students, which is an increase of 65 students, and that does include the preschool students that I just mentioned on the previous section. So overall, an increase of $14,500. And because of that funding shortfall, the SAT or the state adequacy target is 6311. Full funding, what they consider full funded, is at 6375. So they are expecting to not fully fund that student adequacy target in the next year. So again, things are moving pretty quickly. Changes are coming to us on a very regular basis. So as they do, we will continue to make changes as we get into the fiscal year so that we are well ahead of any shortfalls that may occur as a result of any further COVID-19 activity, or if the state does not experience a bounce back to the economy as things are starting to open back up. This is what it looks like all spread out in the numbers. So we are expecting about a $405,000 increase to our overall budget on the operating side. So that's about a 1.8% increase. And we have, you can see here on county revenue, state revenue, and also another hit is the LEAs, which is the local educational authorities. This is the tuition being paid by Riverview and/or Normandy. So we are phased out of that at this point. So we're expecting a decrease there. So again, due to COVID and the shifts in the economy, we are projecting slight losses in both county and state revenue. And here's just a graphic representation of what those revenues look like. You can see, of course, as we always discuss, local revenue is the majority of our revenue, followed by state. Somewhere in the, it usually ranges between 8 and 10%, just depending on where we are in the year. So on to positions. So these are the positions that we are, I still say preliminary because things are still moving around a little bit, but these are the positions that we are currently budgeting for. A total of 8 FTE or full-time equivalent. These are all, you should be familiar with all of these. Okay, salaries, we're projecting an overall increase of 5% across both certified and non-certified, and that is due to, of course, those salary additions that we, or excuse me, the staffing additions that we just discussed, plus a 2.75 increase to support staff salaries and a 2.5% increase to administrator and teacher salaries. Benefits is also another expense that has increased. It typically will over time. And insurance benefits overall will increase 9%. That's a little misleading. You've heard me say that our health insurance benefits are increasing as a category by 7.5%. But once you figure in the staffing additions, that takes us up to that 9%. So all in all, benefits, which includes retirement, Medicare, all those other types of benefits, we are expected to increase overall 5% on the benefit side. Purchase services, these have increased quite a lot since the last time we've talked as well, as has supplies. But this is all primarily due to changes that we've added due to COVID and how the district is intending to respond to that public health crisis. Capital outlay, we've decreased that mainly because some of the planned infrastructure projects and updates have been moved into the Prop E. You won't see Prop E in the budget yet because we haven't sold those bonds yet, so there's no sense in putting those in. But once we do, we'll adjust the budget accordingly and add in the budgeted expenses as those become more clear. Debt, at this point, we're decreasing the debt service expenses $800,000, and that's due to the principal payments that we've been making, as well as refunding those refundings that we've done in the past years. Just like a house payment, from time to time, the amortization tables change the numbers that are of principal and interest that are due. Special considerations. So construction projects related to the recent passage of the bond, those again are not budgeted, but will be as soon as we have those numbers. And we do anticipate that supply costs could continue to increase as we get a clearer picture of how COVID is going to affect the school year. So speaking of COVID, these are the areas that we've added. Last time we met, we talked about this, but I had yet to add any staffing in. So all of these other items you are familiar with. The mitigation of the virus itself, protecting from it, so the cleaners and those types of things. And then the Chromebooks, of course, making sure that all of our students have a device that's adequate to learn remotely if required. The swivels and the iPod touches, that's to record those lessons. Of course, cases for those Chromebooks. I've also built in a significant contingency on the instructional side, just in case we didn't think of everything, and I'm sure that we haven't. We've been pretty exhaustive, but things will pop up that we didn't anticipate, and I need to be able to cover those in the budget so there's no surprises, or at least to minimize the surprises. Summer staffing to keep our food service operation to feed our community up. That staffing number is built into the budget. And in-class food service, we've increased this just slightly as we get clear on Irene Wan, our food service manager's plan for how we will respond to social distancing and feeding our kids at school. So the next line item is one that you haven't seen before. It's $152,000. This is for salaries and benefits. This number is not baked into this budget presentation yet. This was a number that we landed on late this afternoon, and getting these things into position control is a rather intricate process at this stage of the game. We will get those in prior when appropriate. So these, if we were to add staffing, and we feel that we will need to, but we don't yet know what that looks like, adding 8 positions between 0.5 and 0.6 FTE each. Somewhere, and the positions that we would be adding to would be, or bolstering would be teaching assistants and custodial. any combination thereof, just depending on what the needs are that present as our plans become more firm moving into the summer. So as soon as we have a clearer picture, we'll go ahead and put these in the budget. At this point, I'm comfortable with this number. I feel like we can absorb it. Don't want to have to absorb too much more if we can help it, but we'll do what we need to do. Again, here is a summary of the last 3 years plus this year. This year's budget plus next year's proposed budget, and the increases and decreases are in front of you here. So overall, we're increasing the budget $750,000 or 2.3%. And this is across all categories, including long and short-term debt. So below, again, just a graphic representation of how our expenses are distributed across all of our categories. And these are what you would typically expect as salaries and benefits tend to grow annually. Okay, so on the operating side of the budget, this is what we are proposing. The bottom yellow is where everyone typically draws their attention first. So at this point, we're looking at a 39.9% fund balance for next year as this budget presents, with a surplus of $204,600. Note that I did mention that there could be a potential $150,000 addition staffing. And I did just get, at 5 o'clock this evening, I got some numbers from our medical folks, our school nurses, the additions that they are going to be adding, and those aren't yet to be figured in here. And there are some potential staffing implications that we'll need to discuss as a result of that. Either way, the fund balance has dropped, but we are still looking at a surplus at this time. If we look across this on all funds, you can see here that we have on the teachers, capital projects, and general. So a $1.6 million surplus. And then this is just another way to look at it with projections. Of course, this is in millions of dollars. So you'll notice some decimal points. 0.2 represents 200,000. So our next steps are to finalize the budget document, which I've also attached the agenda. So feel free to download that. It's like 90 something pages. So enjoy. We are still editing. It is still a draft. So if any changes are made between now and the date of the meeting that you will approve this, I'll make sure that I highlight those changes. We won't need to go through everything. I'll just highlight the changes as we go through. There are some formatting things that we were unable to get corrected in time for this particular draft, but there's nothing so egregious that it can't be excused in a draft document. So you'll see the finished version of that on June 30th when this is slated to be approved. Are there any questions?
Chris, I guess, you know, due to the state statutes, we're approving this June 30th, you know, to have ready for the new fiscal year. Guidance around COVID probably will continue into July and whatnot. So obviously you guys have budgeted forward on some of the supplies needed, but it's a fluid situation, obviously. So more a statement, or we may have a budget amendment earlier in the process of that could be a substantial change to this budget, you know, in July or August, depending on how rules and regulations shake out, I would imagine.
Absolutely, and I fully expect a July amendment to be perfectly frank. You know, like you said, the information is changing seemingly every day. It's not quite that often, but it feels like it. So as things do come out, we will adjust that budget. We've, as of June 30th, when we do that that last budget amendment for the year, we'll have amended the budget 5 times over the course of this year. I do expect that that will probably increase, but that's just to, as the district responds to that public health crisis and how it may be affecting the district.
And can I add one thing as well in terms of being responsive? You know, this is the first time schools have ever taught and educated children during a pandemic. So we're doing all the planning now, but it might not really be what is fitting at that moment. So we also need to think things may have to pivot yet again once we have everyone together. So I just want to put that out there. We're hoping this will fit what we're anticipating once kids come, but we may have to really shift once we're all together.
I just want to say, Chris, thank you. This process where we get little portions throughout the year, I think is a much easier and digestible way to do it, so there's no surprises. And I know it's a moving target constantly, especially now. So thanks for all the work that you and your team have put into this.
You're very welcome.
All right, well, we obviously have about 12 days before we're going to approve this at the end of the month. So if you have questions or concerns between now and then, obviously Chris has been very quick in responding about those things up to this point, and I'm happy to continue to entertain those. And yeah, we can conclude this portion if folks are feeling like they've had information presented that they need. Okay, I am going to then call for a motion to adjourn the budget workshop.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Ralph. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we'll all take a mini break here, and we'll see you back at 7.
All right, watch your inboxes, and I'll shoot that invite out as soon as we end this call.
Great.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.